This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Africa with insights into Africa's ever-changing business landscape. I am Peninah Karibe in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, where it's 9 p.m. It is 2 p.m. in Washington, D.C. and 2 a.m. in Beijing. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome to the show. As always, we begin with a look at the markets. It was all quiet in South Africa, which was observing the National Women's Day. It's a day that celebrates the strength and resilience of women and their contribution to society and country. Up north in Egypt, the AGX 30 ended stronger. This on the back of news that the petroleum minister discussed in a phone call with Israel's energy minister future plans for Israeli gas to be liquefied at Egyptian natural gas liquefaction plants for re-export. This is a result of conversations that started early this year on how to boost cooperation to maintain the energy security of both countries. Coming up on the show tonight, Code Red warning on the level of emissions the world continues to generate. No more trouble matching human organs for transplant as scientists in China turn to create 3D printed organs. And Egypt seeks to boost development of online payment solutions as e-commerce grows in the country. We kick off the program tonight with matters climate change. The UN's climate science body says human activity, primarily the production of atmospheric carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels, has driven global warming at a rate that is unprecedented in the last 2,000 years. In a report released earlier on Monday, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that if the current warming continues, the Earth will exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target and reach 2 degrees Celsius by 2050. This will further intensify the severity of extreme weather that is currently being blamed for devastating floods and destructive wildfires, among other catastrophes. This is the first major scientific review since 2013.
Climate change is accelerating quite fast, actually, now, because we are not being able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So basically, we heated up the planet by 1.1 degrees already, and probably we're gonna reach 1.5 degrees within this decade. So basically, this is a strong message that we are changing the climate in an irreversible way. So basically, we are damaging the climate in such a way for the next generations that this will certainly make the socioeconomic difficulties in the future much worse than in our generation.
We're now joined via Zoom from Nairobi by Charity Migwi, the regional campaigner of 350africa.org. Charity, it's a pleasure having you tonight. So the report says we're likely to cross the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2040. We are already experiencing weather extremes, and yet currently we are at 1.1 degrees Celsius. Should it get to that 1.5 limit, what are we likely to see?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I actually seriously hope that we don't get to that point, because it will be catastrophic. What I think the report gives us today is a warning so that we can act, because the reality is, if we do not act, we're likely to see severe climate impacts, some of which we are already experiencing right now. So it's bound to be even worse than what we are seeing now. And we're talking about not only these impacts being experienced in Africa, but also beyond. So more places across the globe will most definitely experience adverse climate impact. And I think we have already been seeing this, especially as we have seen record high temperatures in the northern west part of the US, and extreme flooding events happening in Europe. So it's not only Africa that is going to experience adverse weather impacts. I think it's going to cut across the globe, and it's going to be severe, and the report says that we need to act now. So it's really a warning. So I am very optimistic that if we act according to what the report says, that we will not get to that point.
Right, so the report also says that 1.5 degrees Celsius will be reached by 2040 in all scenarios. That is just 19 years from now. So realistically speaking, can these emission levels be reduced to below that limit in that time frame?
I think it's possible because we already know the solution, and the solution means cutting back on carbon emissions, and even so, even if we do reach that 1.5 beyond all scenarios, as the report says, I think it will not still be as bad as if we keep on continuing emitting a carbon. So the point is that we need to cut our emissions. We need to cut our emissions now, so that we can just be below the cap, or just at the cap of 1.5, so that we don't get to a point of no return in terms of adverse climate impacts.
And the biggest challenge for governments has always been balancing the need for development and reducing carbon emissions. How can that balance be achieved?
I think one, that is a false problem that has always been created by fossil fuel industries. I think we are not seeing the potential of renewable energy. If at all, we are only looking at fossil fuels as the solution to development, because the reality and the truth is that there's a lot of potential in the renewable energy sector. A lot of clean jobs can be explored, and much more than what the fossil fuel industry is currently offering. And if you look at the impacts that fossil fuels are creating right now, displacement of people, destruction of environment, and causing climate impacts, that is sort of a reverse on development. And with renewable energy, you don't get to experience such negative impacts on environment, on people's lives, on climate. So in reality, it's not really about a balance. It's actually just about seeing the potential of clean renewable energy, which is actually the real solution to development.
Okay, so we do know that almost every nation on Earth signed up to the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. That is huge commitment to tackle climate change. So as we gear up for COP26 Global Climate Summit that's happening in November, 3 months from now, what commitments are you hoping to see from government heads and stakeholders?
Yeah, one is that we hope that the fossil fuel industry will have a plan to have a just transition away from fossil fuels. They do have the potential to be early adopters of renewable energy and just phase out fossil fuels, because in reality we don't need any more. And we also need finance institutions to stop channeling funds to these destructive industries, and instead channel those funds to clean renewable energy forms of sources, so that they can boost the development, as you see, for the countries. And also we need the governments to stop issuing licenses and approving concessions for fossil fuel exploration in their countries. And beyond that, we also need the developed countries to honor their commitments in terms of financially supporting developing nations to deal with the impacts of climate change, and also just to address severe impacts in terms of adaptation and mitigation. So that is what I would really like to see as we go forward to COP26.
All right, Charity Muigu, we appreciate you talking to us tonight. Thank you very much. Extreme weather like droughts and flooding have been hitting Africa hard. In Kenya, drought has hit 10 counties, and this has forced pastoralists to trek longer distances in search of water. Astatal has more on this.
Nasawa Lomgoi is a pastoralist from Kenya's Isiolo County. Worsening drought conditions have meant she has to travel farther to fetch water. Currently, she has to travel 30 kilometers every 2 days with her livestock.
The drought has really affected us. We have a problem accessing water. Right now, we do not have any hopes of rain. We do not know how the animals are going to survive in the near future.
The government, in partnership with the Food and Agricultural Organization, is looking to tackle the issue. The Ministry of Devolution is set to sign the Anticipatory Action and Response Plan for pastoral and agro-pastoral communities. 8 Kenyan counties are set to benefit from this initiative.
So far, the government, together with FAO, are providing the support in terms of some cash transfers. We are also working on some of the intervention through vaccinations and deworming activities to protect the livelihoods of the individuals in the communities.
This comes as Ambrose Negatich says the extent of this year's drought conditions have been exceptional. Kenya's National Drought Management Authority estimates drought conditions in 10 counties could worsen from August to December. Astatal, CGTN.
South Africa is currently one of the world's largest carbon emitters, and with a lot of other countries now moving away from fossil fuel-based electricity, there's considerable pressure for South Africa to follow. As CGTN's Angela Copeland now explores, the country's national power utility has put forward a $10 billion plan to global lenders that would see it shut the vast majority of its coal-fired plants by 2050 and embrace renewable energy.
Part of the government plan for the future energy mix includes 4 gigawatts of power to come from gas-fired power stations.
At the end of the day, gas is also a fossil fuel. It is also carbon intensive, and we can't have a system whereby we are getting all of our electricity needs generated by fossil fuels. Gas is cleaner than coal. This is true. It's got less emissions intensity. But there are a number of factors that come into this.
There is a market for gas in the country currently. Some 200 petajoules of gas is used by industrial consumers annually, and it will increase as the country moves to meet its climate change targets.
We estimate that the gas demand will probably come out at about 2.5 times what we're currently using. So roughly speaking, between 500 and 600 petajoules per annum.
As demand for gas increases by industrial users and eventually Eskom, there's a concern about the need for more gas receiving infrastructure.
Eskom has a similar position than us. There is no capacity, in fact, to service Eskom's needs right now for 3 to 4 gigawatts of power in the immediate future. That is all new capacity that will have to be brought on stream in order to meet that demand.
A recent development sees financial institutions looking to invest in countries who are serious about reducing their impact on climate change. It's all about the cost of decarbonizing.
For South Africa, for example, it's $7 per ton, compared to the EU, which is $120 per ton. So in other words, all these financiers are looking at countries like this and thinking these countries are basically low-hanging fruit. And if we can give the financing at this point in time, a lot can happen.
Eskom has made its intentions clear. It's planning a just transition from coal to gas, renewables and nuclear.
And that is also based on some of these funding mechanisms that they're looking at as well. And for them, it makes sense because if they can get this sort of financing, they can also move to a more renewables heavy system.
Not everyone's excited about the transition from coal to gas, but it's seen as a bridging energy source and needed to reduce the carbon emissions. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
In some corporate headlines, African mobility fintech Move has raised $23 million to provide financing to Biotechnology's drivers to buy cars across the sub-Saharan Africa region. The funding round brings Move's total funding to $68.2 million. It was led by Speed Invest and US-based Left Lane Capital with the participation of its existing investor, EMSO Asset Management. BioNTech and partner Pfizer have supplied more than 1 billion doses of their COVID-19 vaccine. As per July 21st, the supply count is up from more than 700 million doses announced by the company in June. Based on delivery contracts so far, BioNTech says it expects to accrue $18.7 billion in revenue from the vaccine this year. That's up from a forecast in May of about $15 billion. Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil company, has reported a nearly four-fold rise in second quarter net profit, bolstered by higher oil prices and a recovery in oil demand. Aramco's net profit rose to $25 billion for the quarter ending June 30th. Analysts had expected a net profit of $23.2 billion. Aramco declared a dividend of $18.8 billion in the second quarter, in line with its own target, which will be paid in the third quarter. And finally, Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong will be released from prison on parole later this week. Lee served 18 months of a revised 30-month sentence for offering bribes to South Korea's former president Park Geun-hye. He initially served 1 year of a 5-year sentence from August 2017, which was later suspended. That court decision was then overturned, and while the sentence was shortened, he was sent back to jail in January this year. That's a look at your corporate news. Coming up to 17 minutes into the hour, you're watching Global Business. Still ahead. The central bank in Tunisia calls for economic reforms to navigate out of the current crisis. And Egypt braced for resistance as it continues with its plan to remove bread subsidies.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is CGTN. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
The Executive Board of the Central Bank of Tunisia has called for economic reforms to help the country overcome its current crises. BCT also emphasized the need to restore the confidence of international institutions and foreign donors in the Tunisian economy. The Apex Bank has kept its rate steady this year, despite the country facing what the bank's governor has described as the most difficult conditions ever. Let's discuss this further with Professor Monsef Chekrouhou, a professor of economics at the École des Hautes Études Commerciales in Paris. He joins us live via Zoom from Tunis. Professor Chekrouhou, thank you very much for your time tonight. So the central bank appears very, very keen to overcome the current economic crisis in the country. What measures is the bank looking to implement to do this?
Thank you very much for inviting me out of Tunis, and thank you also for being out of Nairobi, which is very, very dear to me also. So therefore, I would like to say that what has been happening is a long time, about 2 years, a descent to the hell for the Tunisian economy, since it has not been producing enough wealth creation for the Tunisians. It has not distributed that wealth evenly because of the party suspicions, and therefore Tunisia went into a mismanagement of the whole crisis, while Tunisia used to be a very good student of all the international institutions that financed it. So luckily, there is a president of the republic who is a very, very well-trained chief and professor of law, and he has taken his responsibility, and Tunisia now is being saved while avoiding any kind of violence or any kind of, God forbid, some people being hurt. So this is the situation in Tunisia. For many years, the successive governments have been named by this parliament, and instead of achieving, they were not kept under good control by the management controllers of the government. And therefore, there has been no riches created for Tunisia. That means for the Tunisian people. And the Tunisian people started suffering more and more. And this could have led Tunisia, if it weren't for a good and responsible president who is very much learned in law in Tunisia. If he didn't intervene, Tunisia could have been going down the drain for a long time. Luckily, he has intervened within the limits of the constitution, and he has shown that Article 80 of the Constitution, when there is an important and disturbing danger that the country could be facing, he intervened in the cycle of that number 80 rule, and he has practically been saving Tunisia, trying to keep Tunisia together. And unfortunately, some of our very good friends, like the United States, we thought they would be standing with Tunisia, but they have been giving us lessons, and they have not been giving the advice that is needed. The central bank has been doing a very, very good job here. It is managed by a very competent person, and the team with him is very competent as well. Luckily for Tunisia, that there are competent people at the stern, and they are managing the country correctly to get the country out of this very bad position where we are now.
All right, Professor Monsef Shekruhu, live for us via Zoom in Tunis. We appreciate that. Thank you very much, Professor. Egypt has announced plans to increase the price of the country's subsidized bread for the first time in over 40 years. Egypt's bread subsidies were set at nearly $2.9 billion, just over half of the food subsidy bill for the fiscal year ending in June. This amounts to roughly 1.8% of overall state spending, as CGTN's Yasser Hakim finds out.
Bread is the #1 item in any Egyptian meal. Late President Anwar Sadat faced street riots when he tried to slash subsidies on bread in 1977 and had to back down. For decades, different Egyptian leaders were reluctant to do the same. But current President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi took everyone by surprise.
The time has come to increase the price of the 5 piastre loaf of bread. You would say, why? Let the government pay it. Let the Prime Minister and Minister of Supply cover the cost. I'm saying no. I will bear responsibility. I cannot accept that the price of 20 loaves of bread is the same as 1 cigarette. 1 cigarette. You expect me to feed the children with £8 billion a year? Where do I get the money from? This system should stop. I'm not saying to increase the price too much, but this thing has to stop.
Most experts believe it was the correct decision. The price of a load of bread is sold at less than half a cent, though it costs over 10 times more to produce. It puts a strain on the state budget.
The subsidy bill for food supplies in the 2019-2020 fiscal year was 80 billion Egyptian pounds. In the 2020-2021 fiscal year, it was 84 billion pounds. In the current fiscal year of 2021-2022, it is 87 billion pounds, which have been pledged for food subsidies. We cannot say that the aim is to raise prices, but it's meant to restructure the subsidy system.
Atiyah Hamed, who owns a chain of bakeries, also welcomes the president's move. He says most bakery owners want to double the price of bread.
We are about 28,000 bakeries in the country. My personal proposal is to double the price. In this case, people will still get 5 loaves with the same value as before, though higher in price, while the production cost will remain the same. The small price difference won't affect the citizens who buy subsidized bread, but it will help the government raise the funds it needs.
He also believes the government can save a lot of money if it cracks down on corruption in the subsidy system.
We have big deficiencies in market control from the Ministry of Supply. There must be an independent monitoring organization to supervise the production and supply of subsidized bread. It will balance the market, ensure the subsidized ingredients are used for producing subsidized bread and not sold in the free market, and also that the subsidized bread is delivered to its rightful owners, the poor people.
Nearly 65 million people out of the 100 million population receive subsidized bread on monthly ration cards. To calm their fears, the president said the subsidy cuts won't be significant and will help gather $500 million annually for social services.
The price of bread has been fixed for more than 35 years, which is not a fair value. The reduction in subsidies is not meant to increase prices, but the goal is to redirect the money for nutrition programs to provide healthy, high-quality meals to students.
The decision conforms with the government's policy of slashing subsidies on energy, as well as to free up funds in the state budget for economic and social development. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Zimbabwe was once a top beef exporter, but a foot-and-mouth outbreak in 2001 stopped sales abroad. The country has failed to restore lost markets because of the lack of livestock traceability. Now, all that is set to change following the launch of an app developed by Livestock Global and backed by global financial giant MasterCard. Farai Mokutuya has the details.
It's dipping day at Alistair Banks's farm. After getting doused with chemicals, the cows are scanned using the Livestock Global app that uploads the data onto a digital cloud powered by MasterCard's blockchain-based provenance solution.
We use an application that we've developed combined with electronic tags that are inserted in all the cattle, and that's inclusive of them coming to the dip at a time, at a place, provides us with quite a lot of traceability in terms of the animals being in the right place, receiving treatments that we can show and measure over time, and seeing those in an orderly manner. That allows us then to create a transparency into the business that we're running here. And that allows for people on the outside to view it through the cloud as if they were here on the farm.
The app will also help deal with long-running problems like cattle theft and illegal movement, amongst others.
By recording key events such as when and how frequently cattle are dipped, this app can also help to mitigate a challenge that has emerged as a major threat to Zimbabwe's livestock, and that is theileriosis, a tick-borne disease that has decimated herds across Zimbabwe.
Now the vet services, they've got all the information. They can even tell which animals are not being dipped, which household is not bringing their animals for dipping. Once all the animals are tagged and recorded on the system, they can then have those red flags, and they can now go and actually investigate why a certain village or a certain household is not dipping their animals.
Zimbabwe is the first country in the world to roll out the app, which is seen as a game changer for the continent.
In Africa mainly, we have a lot of cattle which are untraceable, and because of that,
they can't be exported. And so you have millions of farmers and tens of millions of cattle that cannot enter global markets. Part of the conditions to enter global markets is traceability.
Traceable cattle can also be used as collateral, which means livestock that has already a huge ceremonial importance will see its commercial value significantly enhanced. Farai Makutuya, CGTN, Rua, Zimbabwe.
1:30, you're watching Global Business. Let's take a short break. Coming up. The cost of LCD TVs has risen 35% this year. We'll look at why. And scientists in China to create 3D printed human organs and a bit reduced transplant waiting lists.
It's taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Looking at other headlines this hour, Sudan has recalled its ambassador to neighboring Ethiopia. Khartoum's decision comes days after Addis Ababa rejected Sudan's offer to mediate in the ongoing conflict in Tigray. Tensions between the two countries have been high due to a dispute over a border area and the ongoing three-way row over Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam. Rwandan and Mozambican troops deployed to Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province are reporting that they have recaptured control of the insurgent stronghold of Mocimboa Praia. Security forces say that the recovery of the town marks the end of the first phase of counterinsurgency operations in Mozambique. The port town has been a major stronghold for insurgents linked to Islamic State. At least 12 soldiers have been killed in Burkina Faso, according to several security sources. The attack allegedly took place on Sunday in the Boucle du Mohon region, located in the northwest of Burkina Faso. The army has yet to release an official statement regarding the assault. And Tunisia is looking to speed up its COVID-19 vaccination drive. The government has opened vaccinations to people over 40. It has set a target of vaccinating over half the population by October. As part of this effort, over 300 vaccination centers held an open day for people on a walk-in basis. The Health Ministry says over 500,000 received vaccination on Sunday. Now, prices of liquid crystal display television sets rose by nearly 35% on a yearly basis during the first 6 months of this year. According to industry experts, higher LCD panel prices and continued chip shortages are the main reasons for the price increases.
In Shanghai, the current price of a 65-inch LCD TV is 6,000 yuan or $900. Prices have been increasing since the beginning of the year. A salesperson said all the LCD panels and chips cannot be made easily from the existing factories. Prices of TV sets have risen on e-commerce platforms as well. Industry experts say that LCD panels account for 70% of the overall TV costs, and this has been increasing steadily.
It's rare to see 15 consecutive months of increases. Small LCD panel prices have gone up by nearly 200%. Large-size LCD panels have seen a 50 to 60% increase.
Prices of LCD panel have started to rise since April last year, and enterprises can only ease the operating pressure by raising product prices.
It's a very painful period for traditional enterprises as panel prices have risen sharply. The sluggish domestic market demand and the sharp decline in overseas demand has made the situation even worse.
Data also show that in the first half of this year, the total sales of color TV sets in China was about 18 million units, down 15% on a yearly basis. Experts say consumers are still averse to price increases. Song Yaotian, CGTN.
Silicon makers in Xinjiang producing parts for the solar panel industry have been bearing the brunt of U.S. sanctions. Industry players have had to deal with challenges like higher raw material prices and tight supplies. Weilin Tang checks in with one of the world's largest polysilicon manufacturers to find out how the company is coping with the situation.
From cotton to solar panels. In June, the U.S. Department of Commerce added 5 companies in China's northwestern region of Xinjiang onto its entity list.
Xinjiang Daqo New Energy, where I am right now, is one of them. Analysts say the trickle-down effect on solar supply chains can be immense, given how the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region accounts for almost half of the world's polysilicon supply.
Xinjiang Daqo produces these chunks of polysilicon. It sells them in various sizes to wafer makers, which eventually find their way to solar panel players worldwide. From Daqo's end, though, it says its direct customers in the supply chain consist of only local Chinese players. So, how big of an impact is this U.S. blacklist having on the company?
In the short term, we will see little impact because the U.S. makes up less than 10% of our downstream clients' solar panel markets. Currently, overseas markets account for about 60% of our client sales. But if the U.S. partners with its allies like Europe, then it might have an impact on us.
The International Renewable Energy Agency says the world added about 127 gigawatts of solar capacity in 2020. Of this, only 12% was in the U.S. While Tao claims China's domestic power demand is more than enough to absorb this capacity shunned by the U.S., supply is tight.
A lot of our downstream wafer clients are unable to buy polysilicon now, whether it's from Xinjiang or other places. You're lucky if you're able to get hold of some.
Polysilicon prices have been rising. While still low compared to what prices were a decade ago, it's the increase seen in the past year that worries the industry. This has led to a surge in solar module costs that analysts say that's not seen in years, and this is causing delays to some major global solar panel projects.
Prices shouldn't rise too much from here. Prices may increase a little more in the short term, but they should come down by the second half of 2022. This is because there will be new capacity trickling in. Our current annual capacity of 70,000 tons of high-purity polysilicon will be bumped up to 105,000 by Q1 of next year. Other polysilicon manufacturers are also expanding their capacity. By next year, supply from Xinjiang alone should hit up to 300,000 tons.
Funds to expand capacity will partly come from Xinjiang Daqo's listing on the Shanghai Stock Exchange's Sci-Tech Innovation Board on July 22nd. The company has also set its sights on making semiconductor-grade polysilicon. Tao says the company has 1,000 tons of annual capacity in the pipeline, claiming its products have already reached the level required. Weilin Tang, CGTN, Shihezi City, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region.
China's total foreign trade expanded by 24.5% in the first 7 months of the year. That's as the world's second biggest economy continued to recover strongly from the pandemic. Data released from the General Administration of Customs on Saturday shows that the country's total imports and exports were valued at more than $3 trillion in the January to July period. In July alone, the country's total trade rose by 11.5%, marking a positive year-on-year growth for 14 consecutive months. China's exports also jumped 24.5% on a yearly basis during the first 7 months of 2021, according to official data. High-tech products accounted for a big chunk of the total. Zhang Xishuan takes a look.
Able to travel up to 580 kilometers on a full battery, this new energy SUV is one of the most popular models in China. It's made by NIO, and this September it will start selling in Norway in the company's first overseas foray. This model has already been adapted to the European regulations and consumer appetites. In terms of things like charging standards, maps, automatic parking, and a battery monitor. It's a high-end product aimed at a high-end market.
Different from other car manufacturers that sell through dealers, our overseas expansion plan is to entirely rely on direct sales. And we have a different product orientation. Last year, the average price of China's export vehicles was 93,800 yuan. But our cars have an average price of 420,000 yuan in the domestic market here. A lot of exports focused on developing countries in the past, but we're focusing on developed countries' markets, the major markets of high-end luxury brands.
The company will also export an electric sedan to Norway, and it hopes to expand into 5 more European countries next year. Shanghai's vehicle exports during the first half of the year jumped 1.65 times from a year earlier. The city exported 60,000 electric vehicles from January to June, an increase of 7.5 times year-on-year. And some other high-tech developers like chip makers have been exporting their products for years and have recently seen a great increase in sales. The advent of artificial intelligence has rapidly spurred the development of products that require secure and fast wireless connectivity. And that's just what the Shanghai-based chipmaker Espressif provides. Specializing in low-power and Internet of Things solutions, the company last year produced 167 million chipsets and modules, many of which went to foreign clients, in countries like the Czech Republic, India, Singapore, and Brazil. During the first half of this year, it made revenue of 630 million yuan, more than double last year's figure.
We all have our own niche, in this area, and we happen to be in the technology field. What we strive to do is to be different from our competitors. We don't want to be engaged in a race to compete on pricing. So we have always been careful to design our products so that there is some differentiation. We were one of the first companies who have integrated all the external components on the Wi-Fi module into the chip. We have a huge ecosystem of software developers who work with our technology. So if you go on to GitHub, you will find like 50,000-60,000 open source projects based on our chips.
The increasingly higher technical level of China's exports is opening new markets for the country's products.
China has been acquiring more cooperation opportunities in Southeast Asia and Europe. Especially in the tech field, in the past Chinese companies would work more with those in the US, but less with Europe. Now more European companies are looking for cooperation with Chinese firms in tech development. Chinese tech developers should learn more about how to introduce their products to foreign buyers directly, as overseas markets still lack a thorough understanding of Chinese tech products.
According to a recently released study by Harvard University's Growth Lab, China ranked 16th globally in an index measuring the diversity, technical sophistication, and volume of a country's exports in 2019, up 3 places from a year earlier. The US ranked 11th, with the gap between the two countries cut in half over the past decade. And Japan has topped the ranking for 19 successive years while posting sluggish growth. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
3D printing, also known as additive manufacturing, is disrupting many industries. Besides offering endless possibilities to the manufacturing world, the technology is gaining popularity in the healthcare industry as well. And what's hot tonight, CGTN's Tao Yuan takes us to China's Shandong province, where scientists are using additive manufacturing to create 3D printed organs that could help reduce global organ transplant waiting lists.
This is no ordinary summer school, but a lesson on the most state-of-the-art biotechnology to inspire young scientist wannabes. Printing human tissue and organs may still sound like science fiction today for these high school kids, but it's got the potential to revolutionize the world of medicine.
What we want to achieve is sort of an organ store. If anyone's organs are damaged, they can come to this store to find a replacement that's tailor-made for them.
The idea is similar to that of 3D printing, but instead of metal and plastic, the inkhead churns out layer after layer of gel containing living cells.
Cells come from the patients themselves. Because of that, there will be no rejection from the body.
A piece of knee cartilage fresh out of the printer. It's already being tested on animals and may soon hit the clinic. It's the low-hanging fruit of bioengineering, but the possibility of printing a whole heart or bladder is still a far way off. This is the closest we've got. In 2019, scientists in Israel created a 3D print of a heart with human tissue and vessels. It's only the size of a cherry and doesn't pump. But scientists say it's pushed the envelope of regenerative medicine. I asked how soon before a printed organ can be transplanted into the human body.
Leading scientists in this field predicted 20 to 30 years.
This is also a dream for scientists in tissue engineering and regenerative medicine in China. We hope the global scientific community can work together to make that happen.
That dream might fall on the shoulders of these teenage scientists.
I want to study bioengineering. Now I understand deeper about my future career.
Especially after the COVID-19 outbreak, more children are interested in life and medical sciences. This will have a positive effect on the future of mankind.
Worldwide, 130,000 organ transplants take place each year. But the number of patients on the waiting list is 10 times more. Lives waiting for a second chance. Bioprinting as a solution might still be decades away, but now a glimmer of hope. Taoyuan, CGTN, Shandong Province.
The Tokyo Olympics were like none other, postponed for a year because of the pandemic, athletes competing without fans in the stands, and protests because of rising COVID-19 cases. After 16 days of play, the torch was finally extinguished on Sunday, as CGTN's Mayu Yoshida reports.
With the Olympic flame extinguished at Tokyo 2020, focus in Japan has turned to the legacy of the Games. Organizers initially wanted to showcase the country's recovery from the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. They also tried to engage people across Japan, from volunteers to schools, to promote sports and the Olympic spirit across all generations. But the pandemic changed everything. The one-year delay, the ban on spectators, and loss of interest by sponsors all led to less engagement. Twisting the Games this year were intense heat in Tokyo.
It is the biggest metro area in the world. That comes with a lot of concrete. It is a urban jungle there. So what happens is you get that urban heat island effect, and all of that absorbs heat a lot quicker than the surrounding environment.
But it's not all been bad news. Tokyo 2020 has also highlighted diversity, issues of mental health, and sustainability, prompting wider discussions of important subjects still considered taboo by some. The Tokyo Olympics were also the most gender-balanced summer games in history, with more LGBTQ athletes than ever. Organizers have also pledged to recycle or reuse all items and venues. The athletes' village will be turned into condos and schools, a small town powered by hydrogen. This Yoyogi Stadium was initially built for the 1964 Olympics and was reused this year, with Tokyo keen to avoid the white elephant projects seen in other host cities. Meanwhile, despite the confusion caused by the pandemic, Tokyo 2020 has also left lessons for the future.
How to better manage risk, how to improve our virtual communications, how to come up with innovative ideas to engage people virtually. So all of this, of course, will have significant positive implications as we move into the future games.
The hope is, of course, that these will be a one-off Olympics, that no other games ever has to contend with being competed during a pandemic. Whether lessons can be learned, though, in Japan and elsewhere in the world, is a question that will last far beyond the end of Tokyo 2020. Mai Yoshida, CGTN, Tokyo.
Let's take a look at the commodities market. Oil prices fell more than 3% today, extending last week's steep losses on the back of a rising US dollar and concerns that new coronavirus-related restrictions in Asia could halt a global recovery in fuel demand. The yellow metal prices tanked as well by as much as 4.4% to a more than 4-month low as robust US jobs data stoked concerns of a sooner-than-expected interest rate hike. This could increase the opportunity cost of holding non-interest-bearing bullion. Still ahead on Global Business. E-commerce growth in Egypt offers opportunities for online payment solutions.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Egypt is experiencing a surge in electronic commerce and online trade, and authorities are excited about it. The central bank has allocated about $100 million to fintech startups to support growth of the sector. Specifically, authorities are looking at startups offering non-banking payment solutions required to support e-commerce. CGTN's Yasser Hakim takes up the story of one company that's been successfully providing such services.
Tagir, or Trader in Arabic, is a fast-growing e-commerce startup that has seen an impressive average growth of 40% per month since established in 2019. The social e-commerce platform is enabling online merchants with end-to-end logistics in the market.
We have like hundreds of thousands of online small sellers, but all of them go to the service providers on their own, which makes it like super expensive. So what we do is we build a one-stop shop online platform where we can aggregate all of these thousands of merchants and then go and deal with the suppliers as one unit. And this way you will get much more lower prices, which will come with the benefit of the entire network. We found that those are an informal economy. The e-commerce social sellers online, they are so deprived, they don't have anyone supporting them.
One of the biggest challenges for small online merchants is lack of access to banking services, payments, and credit lines.
Definitely payment is not the easiest things. I mean, the number of wallets there is limited. It's not a wide range of wallets. Like services are not stable all the time. That's because of the massive pressure there is on only 3 or 4 wallets. Most of our merchants, they are maybe students, they may be like housewives, they may be like online sellers. They're not necessarily have this steady flow of income would justify they open a bank account. So basically, payment is picking up in Egypt, but definitely we have a long way to go there.
There's a growing number of fintechs in the market that aim at filling this gap. Tagir claims to use AI and data science to enable first-time sellers to start and scale their online business with relatively low risk.
The existence of Tagir made these guys not need financing at all, because Tagir goes and deals with suppliers on their behalf. We are partnering up with number of fintech partners so that they can provide services to our merchants, like they can provide early profit payments to them, they can provide them with loans, they can provide them with all of. So Tagir's vision is all about partnering with other fintech partners to provide these services to the merchants. The rise of fintech generally will help include lots of these merchants into the fintech ecosystem.
Tagir has recently closed $6.4 million in its latest seed round. The startup plans to expand and provide similar financial and technical solutions to e-commerce in the Middle East and North African region. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Still in Egypt, the Health Ministry says it'll soon be launching a digital health passport. It's a mobile app that indicates the COVID-19 vaccination status of citizens. The tech solution aims to reduce crowding at vaccine certification centers where scores rush to get paper travel permits proving they are vaccinated. Here's Adel Mahri with more.
For months, Egyptians who wanted to travel abroad had to shuttle between vaccination centers, health and foreign ministry offices to be issued an internationally recognized COVID-19 vaccine certificate. This month, the government introduced an English replacement to the Arabic version of the COVID-19 vaccination certificate the government has been issuing.
Since we began this service on August 1st, there has been a huge influx of citizens. They need to go through a lot of procedures in order to get document authentications for travel. The paper has a QR code, watermark and UV ink to prevent forging.
Egyptian travelers showed up daily at one of 126 offices nationwide that offered the new certificate. Due to the huge demand, the government feared these centers could become a source of further viral infections. It's why the Health Ministry announced a new solution this week, a mobile app that will act as a digital health passport.
QR codes for vaccine status is now a global demand. It's like a passport which I need to leave airports and enter others to satisfy authorities that I am COVID safe. The app helps in having this certification on your phone. The app will be much better because it will help me avoid contact with people.
It's a great idea. It will make people's lives easier. Everyone has a phone, so no one will need to stand in lines here or move from one building to the other to get your travel documents ready.
The app adopts a traffic light alert system. It'll show green for fully vaccinated, yellow for receiving a single dose, and red for not vaccinated. Egypt's new health digital passport will record the brand of the vaccine and the dates on which the jab was administered.
Health officials say the new mobile application will be used to access public places like theaters and sports events. The new technology also introduces what it calls promote mode, an option to identify all those vaccinated around you in the same location. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Looking at currencies now, and the Kenya shilling continues a losing streak as concerns about a surge in COVID-19 infections drive dollar buying by importers. The unit was pegged at 108.91 per dollar. The CFA franc also continues losing as the region battles the coronavirus, climate change, and natural resource management hurdles. And with that, we come to the end of Global Business Tonight. To invite your feedback, send it to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for watching.